Good evening, everyone. Chris Profi, musically obsessed. Happy weekend, finally. All right, so I'm coming at you tonight with a video that I promised you on Michael Nesmith. And I'm going to talk about what I have by Michael Nesmith, and I'm going to try to go in chronological order. Now, I almost have everything. I do not have everything that the man released, but I will show you what I have and talk about what I have. And let's get right into this. Okay, first, he came out with an album called The Wichita Train Whistle Sings. This came out in 1968 while he was still with the Monkees. And what's really cool about this album is that these are instrumental versions of his songs, but with a full orchestra. He does Nine Times Blue, Carlisle Wheeling, Tapioca Tundra, Don't Call on Me, Don't Cry Now, While I Cried, Papa Jean's Blues, You Just May Be the One, Sweet Young Thing, and You Told Me. The first time I listened to this, because I have it on vinyl as well, I was like, okay, this is pretty good. But the last couple times I played it, it's really grown on me. It's a really cool album. It sounds totally different than anything he did. So definitely check this out, The Wichita Train Whistle Sings. Then, in 1970, he came out with the album Magnetic South with the First National Band. And then in 1970, he also came out with the album Loose Salute with the First National Band. And in 1971, he came out with the album Nevada Fighter with the First National Band. I happen to have all three of those albums included on this 2-CD set. I also have those first three albums on vinyl, colored vinyl as well. Now, as I said, those first three albums, Magnetic South, Loose Salute, and Nevada Fighter, are probably the three albums that he is best known for. They include his big hit, Joanne. But really, those three albums are the beginnings of country rock. Now, there were other bands doing country rock, the Byrds and the Eagles, but Nesmith was one of the first to record in that genre. What I like about the CD release, as opposed to the vinyl, is that you can really hear the full song cycle. You don't have to bother flipping albums over. The first two albums are actually included on the first CD. And then the only thing you have to do is change to that second disc to hear Nevada Fighter. And in the liner notes, Michael Nesmith talks about how he prefers the CD version because you can listen to it as a full song cycle without the interruptions of turning the vinyl over. So kind of a cool thing. If you have never listened to Michael Nesmith and the First National Band, you've got to check it out. If you are into country rock, if you are into great pedal steel guitar, if you are into, if you're a Monkees fan and you've never listened to this stuff, you've got to listen to it. He had such a kick-ass band with him. I had mentioned pedal steel guitar. He had O.J. Red Rhodes on pedal steel. Now, O.J. Red Rhodes, I was looking him up. He played on so many albums. He played on an album by Carole King. Of course, he played on the Nesmith stuff. He played on a James Taylor record. So just, he and the other band members, just a phenomenal band around Michael Nesmith. So again, check out any of those first three First National Band albums, Magnetic South, Loose Salute, Nevada Fighter. You won't be disappointed. Now, Nevada Fighter came out in 1971. Following that, in 1972, was an album called Tantamount to Treason. And this was with the Second National Band, and this was actually the only album that the Second National Band recorded. This was re-released with Nevada Fighter, and it included 3 bonus tracks. Cantata and Fugue and C&W, Smoke, 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 and Rose City Chimes. So, I'm going to have to pick that up, and I didn't get a chance to pick that up yet. Tantamount to Treason. It's not as strong as the first National Band albums, but it's still great. I love Mama Rocker. I love Bonaparte's Retreat. He does covers of Talking to the Wall and She Thinks I Still Care. Still classic Nesmith. Sort of a trippy vibe to this album. Like I said, different than the first National Band. Not as strong, but still a really good album. Tantamount to Treason. Then, in 1972, he came out with an album called And the Hits Keep On Coming. Now, the funny thing about this album is the title. I guess Michael Nesmith was getting pressure from the record company to release some more hits. Because, of course, he had the hit Joanne on the first album. But the hits had kind of dried out. So Nesmith was like, all right, I'm just going to record an album with O.J. Red Rhodes. It's just going to be me and him. And let's give it a sarcastic title. And the hits keep on coming. Well, you know what? There are a lot of hits on here. Maybe not radio hits, but definitely Nesmith hits. I love this whole album. You've got Tomorrow and Me, The Upside of Goodbye, Listening, Two Different Roads, Different Drum, which was the song that Linda Ronstadt took to, the stars. Harmony Constant, Keep On, Roll with the Flow. This is just a great album. I like the photo on the inside too. Very 70s. So that came out in 1972. Now, in 1973, you have another very strong album called Pretty Much Your Standard Ranch Stash. And if you look where he's blinking, there are the words, buy this compact disc. And on the vinyl, I think it said, buy this record. So some subliminal advertising by Nesmith. This is an awesome album. This was the final album of his on RCA. This included the hit Some of Shelley's Blues, which was covered by so many artists, including the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. But I love Winona on here. I love Born to Love You. He does a version of Uncle Pen. It's another classic Nesmith. What I like about this album, and you hear it a lot with the first song, Continuing, he brings in that 70s soft rock vibe. And that was sort of a different sound. He was kind of expanding and sort of building on that country rock sound. And I like what he was doing, especially in that first song. It's called Continuing. Check that out. Then, in 1974, this was the first album on his Pacific Arts label. This was called The Prison. This was a book and CD. The idea was to listen to the music while reading the book that was contained within. The only problem with that I find, and it might be my ADD, is that I either like to concentrate on just the book or just the music. It's hard for me to concentrate on both at the same time. One main reason is there's a lot of great songs in here with vocals. So when I'm hearing the vocals in the background and I'm trying to read, it is difficult. This has some great songs on it. I love Life, the Unsuspecting Captive. I love Dance Between the Raindrops. I love Hear Me Calling. Another great album. Totally different for Nesmith. The Prison. This came out in 1974. Then, in 1977, he had an album called From a Radio Engine to the Photon Wing. Another great rocking Nesmith album. This included the hit Rio. which is awesome. I also love Casablanca Moonlight. I like We Are Awake. I like Love's First Kiss, The Other Room. But really, for me, Casablanca Moonlight and Rio are worth the price of admission. It's just a great album. Then, in 1978, he had a live album called Live at the Palais. I think is how you pronounce it. And this version that I have actually has some bonus tracks on it. He does Grand Ennui, Calico Girlfriend, Propinquity, Joanne, Silver Moon, Some of Shelley's Blues. He does a Chuck Berry cover called Nadine, Is It You? The bonus tracks, I have a version of Grand Ennui and Capsule recorded in 81, and Crippled Lion and Listen to the Band recorded in 95. So again, this is the bonus version of Live at the Palais. This came out in 1978. Then in 1979, he had Infinite Rider on the Big Dogma. And what's cool about this album is every song title is just one word. You have Dance, Magic, Tonight, Flying, Karaoke, Cruisin', which was the hit, Factions, Light, Horse Race, and Capsule. This had a more produced vibe to it. It was more rocking. It even included, Cruisin' is a little bit of hip hop in there as well. So he was kind of expanding his sound to fit the era. Like I said, this came out in 1979. So I think the whole country rock thing was maybe wearing a little thin. So he wanted to change his sound. You have more of like kind of a disco vibe to this, but still a really good album. The first time I had heard this album, it was so different for me that I really didn't care for it. But the more I listened to it, I really like it. Again, if you're expecting First National Band, you're not going to get it. This is a more updated, late 70s, more rocking, a little bit of disco, a little bit of dance type sound, but it includes the hit Cruisin', which is great. Then, there was a little bit of a hiatus in recording, and in 1989, 10 years, obviously, this album was released called The Newer Stuff. And that's what it is. It was songs that Nesmith was working on at the time between or after the recording of Infinite Rider on the Big Dogma. So you've got some new songs in here. You've got Total Control, Tanya, I'll Remember You, Formosa Diner, Dreamer, El Dorado to the Moon, which I really like, Tahiti Condo, that's funny, Chow Mein and Bowling, another funny song. And then he does some update versions of Magic, Cruisin', Light, Karaoke, Rio, and Casablanca Moonlight. So this was The Newer Stuff. And Nesmith is looking pretty handsome in that picture, don't you think? All right, now, after The Newer Stuff came out in 89, in 1992, he came back with Tropical Campfires. This was a return to form for Nesmith. Back to that country rock vibe. But even expanding more on the sound. Bringing in even some new age elements to his music. Red Roads was back. Very, very strong album. What do I like on here? I love Yellow Butterfly. I love Laugh Kills Lonesome. That is such a great song. Moon Over the Rio Grande. I like Rising in Love. I love Begin the Begin. I Am Not That. This is just a great album. And it's a later album by him. Like I said, it's 1992, but it was a return to form for him. If you've never listened to this album and you're a Nesmith fan, definitely check this out. Tropical Campfires. Then, in 1994, he had part 2 of The Prison. This one was called The Garden. And same idea. You were to listen to this music while you were reading the book. So basically, it was a soundtrack to the book. Again, for me, as I said with the prison, I prefer to listen to a record or read a book. It's hard for me to do both. This album's a little bit easier because it's mostly instrumental. But still, I like to either concentrate on the music that I'm listening to or the book that I'm reading. This album is totally different than other Nesmith stuff. I almost feel like it's more meditative, more new agey. I don't really listen to this that often, and I think maybe I'll have to pop it in again. It's just not one of those albums. Is it pleasing to the ear? Yes, but really it doesn't do much for me. And again, maybe I'll put it in tomorrow and go, wow, this is the best thing since sliced bread. But it's not one of the Nesmith albums that I pull out that often. Okay, so The Garden, 1994. Then, in 1999, he came out with a very, very strong album called Live at the Brit Festival. This is the opening night at the 30th anniversary of the historic Brit Festival in Jacksonville, Oregon. And Nesmith does just a great 2 CD set of his hits. 2 Different Roads, Papa Jean's Blues, Propinquity. He does a funny little thing called 5-second concerts. Yellow Butterfly, Juliana, Laugh Kills Lonesome. So some songs off of Tropical Campfires. Just a really, really strong live release. 2 CD set. Then, in 2000, the soundtrack for Time Rider was released. Now, this was actually recorded in 1982, but it was not released until 2000. Nesmith did all the music for this. This is all instrumental from the movie Time Rider. I've actually never seen Time Rider before. The music's pretty good, though. It's all instrumental. It's more rock-based. It's one of those albums that, I listen to and really I don't need to listen to again for at least 6 months. It just doesn't, it doesn't do too much for me. I like it because it's Nesmith, but, it's not that memorable, I guess I should say. Next, in 2005, he came out with this album called Raise. And this is totally different than anything you've heard by Michael Nesmith. It's more electronic based. There are some hip hop rhythms in it. Just very different for Nesmith. And it's really difficult to explain. The easiest thing to do is to just listen to it. So maybe, I don't think it's available on YouTube, but I think it might be available on Spotify maybe, or Apple Music. But check out Raise. Like I said, it's more of an electronic vibe. Interesting, more rhythmic with electronic drums. It's kind of it's just a cool thing. It's Nesmith expanding his sound. So if you've never listened to Raise, definitely check that out. Then in 2014, he came out with a live album called Movies of the Mind. This is the recorded during his 2013 tour. Not the best packaging on this CD. He does Calico Girlfriend, 9 Times Blue, Little Red Rider, Different Drum, Silver Moon, Casablanca Moonlight, Yellow Butterfly, Cruisin', Dance, Grand Ennui. So kind of a, full concert of like some older songs up until some of the current songs as well, with some great stories in between. So cool live album. Check it out, Movies of the Mind. And then I told you there was an album that I don't have. In 2015, he came out with an album called The Ocean, which is the third in the trilogy. You had The Prison, the garden, and then the ocean. I have not picked up the ocean yet. I do want to get that. That came out in 2015. Then we had this compilation album come out in 2017 called Infinite Tuesday, Autobiographical Riffs, The Music. Funky cover. What's cool about this album is the first song is called The New Recruit, and that was a song that he recorded back in the day as Michael Blessing. Before he became Michael Nesmith, he was known as Michael Blessing. So that's kind of cool to have that early song. There's some songs from The Treason on here, even up to the album Raise. So very cool compilation. This came out on Rhino Records. Then, I also have some releases on the 7A label. Now, if you're not familiar with the 7A label, these guys are huge Monkees fans. I have an album that they released a whole bunch of Mickey Dolenz stuff on. That was released on the 7A label. And then I have a trio of Nesmith albums that were released on 7A. The first one is called Michael Nesmith at the BBC, the Paris Theatre. This was recorded in 1975 at the Paris Theatre in London. 7A does great releases, very high quality releases. There's that Mickey Dolenz album I have right there. What's on here? Silver Moon, Some of Shelley's Blues, Joanne, Dance Between the Raindrops, Mary's Theme, and the closing theme. So this was obviously recorded around the time of the Treason. Very cool. I don't remember liking his version of Silver Moon too much, or Some of Shelley's Blues on this album for some reason. Either it was too slow or I just wasn't a big fan of the arrangements, but it's still a cool album to have. Then in 2018, this also came out on 7A Records. This is Michael Nesmith and the First National Band, Redux. I've seen people on the VC talking about this. This is live at the Troubadour. And as you can imagine, it's all of his hits with the First National Band. Again, this came out on 7A Records. They just do a phenomenal job with their releases. I love their CDs. Their photos. Again, it's all the First National Band stuff. Nevada Fighter, Calico Girlfriend, Joanne, Dedicated Friend, Grand Ennui, Tango Amore, Bye Bye Bye, Some of Shelley's Blues, Thanks for the Ride. So just a great, great, great recording. Nesmith is in really good voice. And the last album I want to show you is Cosmic Partners, Michael Nesmith with Red Roads. This came out on 7A Records last year, 2019. This was recorded at McCabe's Guitar Shop in Santa Monica, California in 1973. And this is just a phenomenal sounding live album. It's Nesmith, Red Roads, and full band going through songs like The Crippled Lion, Tomorrow and Me, The Upside of Goodbye, Grand Ennui, Some of Shelley's Blues. There's some great stories in here. He does a version of Propinquity on here, Joanne. So if you are a Nesmith fan, definitely check this out. And like I said, these 7A releases come with these great booklets of awesome photos, liner notes by Nez, just notes about the concert. Just great, great, great releases. So that's my Nesmith collection. As I said, I want to pick up that twofer of Tantamount and Nevada Fighter because there are 3 bonus tracks on that I got to get. I also want to pick up The Ocean that came out in 2015. But I want to talk about one more thing. There was a movie that came out in the 70s called Northville Cemetery Massacre. And it was a biker horror film. And Nesmith did the soundtrack for it. And I've been researching it, trying to find, was there anything released the recordings of that movie released, and I don't think there were, but maybe there's a Nesmith fan out there who could help me out, because the songs are so cool. They're like little short snippets of songs, but they're kind of cool, folky, country, rough sounding songs. Like I said, it's the soundtrack for the movie Northville Cemetery Massacre. So check it out. If you guys have any information for me, let me know. I used to have it on VHS. I know it's come out on DVD as well, but that's a Nesmith release as well. So always been a huge Nesmith fan. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think. Let me know. Like I said, I don't have everything, but I've got a lot that Nesmith released. And, I'd be interested to know your thoughts. So listen, enjoy the weekend. Listen to music. Listen to Nesmith. All right, BC. See ya.